it's Lisa here from Pro Writing Aid, and thank you for joining us for another session in the Pro Writing Aid series for writers. So my guest today is a book coach and the CEO of Author Accelerator. This is Jenny Nash. Hi, Jenny.
Hi everyone. It's nice to be here.
Right, so we met earlier this year because Jenny is putting together this amazing new course for the self-publishing formula called How to Revise Your Novel. Actually, I'm going to drop a link to that in the chat as well right now. And it's kind of amazing. It's just launched this week. There we go. So have a look there if you're ready. And so when we were putting all of that together, I asked Jenny if she would come and give us a little free taster of the kind of teaching that she does, and she very graciously agreed. So if you're happy for that, I'm just going to hand straight over to you, Jenny. Is that cool?
Yes, that's excellent. Thank you. I have some slides that I'm going to share, and then we'll come back for Q&A, and I'm happy to stay and answer any questions you have. So I'm going to get
Perfect.
to
We'll
the
see you in a bit.
slides. Yeah, so we can get through those. So you should be able to see these, and we should be good to go. So we're talking today about 5 questions you should ask before you write your novel. I'm Jenny Nash. I'm founder and CEO of Author Accelerator, and we're a company on a mission to train book coaches to help writers write their best books. And everybody's probably saying, well, what's a book coach? A book coach is someone who helps writers bring their dreams to life. We're working with the writer all the way through the creative process from inception to publication. It's very much like a basketball coach or an executive business coach or somebody who coaches a musician, where we're really in the creative process with the writer. These are some of the books my clients have published, and I'm also an author myself. I came to this work through my work as a writer and understanding what the creative process was like and becoming a student of that process and really understanding the patterns that creative people go through. My most recent book is a book about book coaching. It's called Read Books All Day and Get Paid for It. So what I do as the head of this company that trains book coaches is I get to see the patterns of not just one writer or a few writers, but a lot of writers. And what we're doing today is based in large part on that knowledge that I have gained. So my goal for today is to save you from the most common mistakes novel writers make, to save you years of frustration, and to save you the heartache of rejection. These may seem like kind of grandiose goals, and they are a little bit, but I also believe that the things we're going to talk about here are the things that really derail people, and they're things that are unseen and often not talked about. So I really do think that it can help you enormously in your process. So how we're going to get there is I'm going to start by talking about the dangers of starting to write too soon. And then we'll get into the 5 questions. And as I said before, come back for a Q&A. So the danger of starting to write too soon. What exactly do I mean by that? And what exactly is the problem with that? It is a huge danger, a giant red flag. This is not red, but it's the same thing. It's a flashing danger sign to do these things. And these things, the danger is that ideas themselves don't mean anything. Ideas are quite cheap. It's the execution of the idea that really matters when it comes to books. I was actually working with a writer this week who was extremely upset because she thought that somebody had stolen her book idea. And that whole notion is really just not real. I mean, people can plagiarize your book. People could take your actual words and pass them off on your own. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this notion that the idea is what matters. Like I have this brilliant idea and somebody else wrote about it, but that is just not the way it works. Writers are always working around similar ideas and always working off of what other writers do or other artists do. It's the execution that makes a difference. So the danger of starting too soon is believing that it's just the idea that matters and not thinking about your execution. The other danger of starting too soon is that most writers can't intuitively write a novel length story that holds together. Certainly if they've never done it before, and even if they have, it's a very complex intellectual undertaking to write a novel. And we get swayed to believe that it's easy because of our life as a reader. As a reader, when we're immersed in a story, it feels like it's so smooth. It feels so easy. The experience of being in that book sort of lulls us into thinking that this is a thing that we could do simply by knowing how to read or knowing how to experience it from that side. But it's a very difficult thing to do. And most people start the process and then they quickly learn that they have a lot of skills they need to develop and a lot of things they still need to learn. And so writing too soon is banking too much on this idea that you're going to be able to pull off this whole novel writing thing without really thinking through what you're doing. Another danger of starting too soon is it means you're going to focus on the plot, which is the thing you see, the surface level of the story. And odds are very good that if you do this, you're going to miss the real story. And we're going to talk a little bit later about how to make sure you don't do this. But we see this all the time in books that aren't holding together. There's this amazing idea, this amazing plot, this thing is going to unfold. The writer has this vision, but they haven't really thought about what the real story is and what the function of this story is going to be. And the danger of that is you end up with a 300-page manuscript that goes nowhere. The fourth danger of starting to write too soon is that when you get stuck, and you will get stuck, you won't have a strong foundation to stand on. You're going to be at risk for giving up, for just saying this is too hard, I can't do it, maybe I'm not good enough, maybe my idea wasn't good enough, maybe I can't really write. Everybody gets stuck. The creative process is built on ups and downs. And if you don't have a strong foundation, when you get stuck, you're going to think that it's you, or you're going to think that you've done something wrong. And the strong foundation is something you can come back to and sort of regroup and rest on, and that's going to help you move forward. So these are some of the dangers of starting too soon. I could go on and on about that, but the point is for us to figure out how not to do that. So I want to move on to that work now. And those are the 5 questions you should ask yourself before you start to write. So question 1, why are you even writing this story? That is the first question. And I just want to say that we're going to be able to share these slides with you later. So if you want to take notes on them, just know that the slides are coming your way. So why are you writing the story? This is a derivative from Simon Sinek's Start With Why, this notion that writers should start with why too. What Sinek says is very few people or companies can clearly articulate why they do what they do. By why, I mean your purpose, cause, or belief. Why does your company exist? Why do you get out of bed every morning? And why should anyone care? And this applies to writers in this way. We want to ask, why does your story exist? Why do you get out of bed every morning to write it? And why should readers care? That's what asking with why is all about, and why starting with why is so critical. So why brings clarity to your work at every level and at every stage in the process. If you know why you're doing this work, if you know why it matters to you, if you know why you've chosen this story out of all the other stories to tell, being able to articulate and know that is honestly the single biggest thing that you can do to give yourself confidence and clarity to make your way through the process. Why can be your North Star. It shows you how to get back on track if you get stuck, if you can't figure out a scene, or should this subplot stay, or does this chapter even belong here, or is my point of view character the right choice? You can go back to your why to try to answer all of those questions. It's that underlying drumbeat that is going to really drive everything and color everything. And why I believe is the absolute best antidote to procrastination and doubt. Whenever there's always a reason why writers procrastinate or feel crushing self-doubt. And the reason is usually does not have anything to do with what they think it has to do with. We might be telling ourselves, I don't know if anybody's going to care about this book. I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know if my idea is good enough. What about the fact that some famous writer just wrote about something similar? Does that mean I should give up my idea? Those are the things that usually run through our minds when we're procrastinating or feeling doubt. But the antidote to that is to really go back to why you're doing it. Why, again, does this matter to you? Why this story? There are so many stories that could come into a writer's brain. And if a story has really gotten your attention, I often talk about it's like a ghost in the attic rattling a chain, and it wants you to pay attention and it wants you to listen. And if you know why it's that story and why it matters to you and why you think readers are going to care, you are going to be so much more likely to break through those moments of procrastination and doubt. And you can use it to be the thing that gets you out of the way. So I want to be clear that when I'm asking about why, it's not about what you want out of your writing life. Like if somebody says, "Why are you writing this book?" and you're saying, "I want to quit my day job and be a famous writer, and I've always wanted to write a book." That's not what I'm talking about. Nor am I talking about why you like your particular topic. Like, vampires are cool, or I'm obsessed with this historical figure and want to tell their story. I'm talking about really a deeper level why, a deeper connection to the topic or to the idea. And you'll know that you're on the right track if it really just makes you smile and grin, or get angry or scream, or make you feel sick to your stomach about taking on the responsibility of telling this story. In other words, it's something that you feel. Your why is usually something that you feel. It's not something that you come at from an intellectual point of view. You might start there, but the deep level why is why this historical character you're obsessed with, or why vampires, or what is it that's really connecting you to this story. And that's what we're trying to get down to. So for this first question, the action that you would take is to write one page on why you're writing this story and to be brutally honest about it. And if you do this one page manifesto, if you will become so important to your process. You can put it next to where you write, look at it when you get stuck. If you need to share it with somebody to help get unstuck, that can be a really powerful thing. But usually there's words and ideas on this one page that can really set the tone for your entire writing process and be that strong foundation for why you're doing what you're doing. So that is asking yourself why and writing a really brutally honest answer. The second question to ask before you start to write is, what is your goal? So this is something that most writers tend to not think about at all. And the problem with that is if you don't know your goal, you're not going to hit your target. So something to think about that's similar is, let's say you want to learn how to play the guitar. So maybe you want to learn how to play the guitar because you want to be the guy who, leads the campfire songs and all your friends turn to, and you want to be the person that brings music to that friend group, and you love the sound of the guitar and you want to do it. That's one goal. Totally different goal is you want to be a rock star and you want to be on stage in the big lights and you want crowds cheering and dancing and screaming and yelling your name. The path to those two different goals is going to be extremely different. And knowing what your goal is going to help you reach that destination or go on the right path. And for some reason, writers just don't do this work. And having a goal means taking your creative endeavor seriously. It means committing to it and committing to a plan. And this is the thing that I see missing in so many writers' approach to their work. They tend to do it more of a kind of a on a whim, or, oh, I have this idea, I'm going to try it, or I've always wanted to do it, so I'm going to do it now, or it seems really easy. I think I'm going to make a bunch of money like somebody else I know, or they're responding to jealousy. These are all good reasons to come to writing. But if you're going to write a book you need to know really why you're doing it and what your goal in doing it means, because there are very different paths to writing a book. And remember that I'm not talking about writing other things. So, writing in a journal or writing blog posts or writing to make sense of something, or obviously business writing or blog writing. I'm not talking about those things. I'm talking about the writing of a book. And you really have to know what that goal is. And knowing what that goal is and committing to your plan means that you're taking a risk that you might fail. And that's the reason many people don't take this step, is it is risky. It's a giant creative risk. It's a giant public risk, because you can't really secretly write a book. It usually takes people at least a year to write a solid draft, or a draft that's ready to go out into the world. And it's very hard for most people to secretly do that. So that means your friends know you're doing it, your family knows you're doing it. And as you get closer and closer to seeking publication, you get the circle of people that you're showing it to broadens. And so that sense of risk broadens as well, that you might get slammed, you might get shut down. The marketplace might tell you that it's no good. These are all things that are likely to really happen. So when you think about your goal, these are the categories that most writers end up falling into when they really ask themselves this question seriously. The first one is the goal of making money. And that is a good goal and a fine goal and a doable goal. But the choices that you might make to make money as a writer are going to be very different from the choices that you might make for other goals. Another goal that we hear a lot about is people want to make a name for themselves. They want to be known for an idea or a story or a topic. They want to have their name in lights. They want to be the one on stage. They want to be out there, connected to this story or this idea. Another goal people might have would be to influence or educate or illuminate or comfort or entertain people. So these are the types of things that books do for people, that books do for readers. And some writers are called to do this work because they feel very strongly about something like this. They love to make people laugh, or they want to educate people about something that they know, or they want to influence them in some way. Another goal would be that the writer wants to raise their voice, speak up, and claim their story. This is an incredibly powerful goal that a lot of writers find that they share, that the reason that they want to write instead of, say, planting a garden or learning to knit or decorating their house is that these elements are inherent in writing a book. The speaking up, the speaking out, the being seen, being heard, these are the goals that people often want from writing a book. Many times people want to prove that they can do it, either to themselves or to other people who don't think that they can do it. I think this is a great goal. I think this kind of motivation can really drive writers and help you get the work down. And then some people feel called to do it. They just want to, they're yearning to do it. They're burning to do it. It's just, they're restless around the idea of writing a book. And for these types of writers, the doing it is the goal, not what the outcome of that is going to be. They want to say, I wrote a book, here it is, I did it, I finished. That's their crowning achievement. And whatever happens in the marketplace is something else entirely. The other goal that we hear a lot about is to leave a legacy for their family, that they want to have something that lives after them, that lives beyond them, that captures perhaps a story that they have been sitting on, inspired by their own experiences or their own family or something around that, and they want to leave that for their family. And I didn't mean to go there quite yet. So those goals are some of the ones that might drive you, and knowing why you're writing is going to be the thing that really helps you stay on track. There's different ways of approaching things based on what these goals might be. There's different paths to publication. There's different ways you might approach the work, and knowing what your goal is going to just be enormously helpful. So the action to take around this idea is to look at that list and check all the boxes on that list that apply to you, and imagine yourself succeeding at your dream of writing a book, and then really write down what you see. How are you out in the world when that book comes out? What are you doing? What is the vision of your goal of being a writer? And knowing that and being able to visualize that is so powerful. And then you can decide what's the first step that you can take towards making that dream a reality. And depending on what your goal is, you're going to choose a different way. The third question to ask yourself before you start to write is, who are you writing for? This is something that a lot of people don't ask, or they ask it in a very perfunctory way. And what we want to do is really think through who that audience is. And it's not just soccer moms or people in tech or young girls who are dreaming of adventure. You really want to know not just the demographic of your ideal reader or your potential reader, but the psychographic uh, picture of them. Who are they inside? What are they coming to your book for? What do they want? What is their reason for reading this book? We we come to books for very specific reasons. So you want to really ask, what does this ideal reader need? So that might seem a strange question if we're talking about a novel, but when you think about it, novels are answers to things that people need. You might need um, solace. You might need escape from the crazy life that's going around you right now. You might just want a little laugh or entertainment or lighthearted fun. You might want education about a topic or a place or a culture or an idea. You might just want to satisfy your curiosity about something, or you might be looking for insight into some idea or topic. So if you think about this from the perspective of the reader, and when you're choosing your own books, it's really interesting to pay attention to what you choose to read, why you choose to read it, when you choose to read it, what is it doing for you, why did you pick this book? And thinking about it from the reader's perspective can help you make this distinction from the writer's perspective, because if you can start out knowing what your ideal reader needs, what sort of service you're providing to them, how are you helping them with their pain? So their pain might be boredom, their pain might be overwhelm, their pain might be confusion, they're in some sort of pain. That's the reason why we choose the books that we choose. And if you know what that is and what you're doing for that ideal reader, you're going to be in a far better position to give it to them through your writing, rather than just sort of writing in the dark, or just sort of writing something that you think is cool, or writing something just because. It's these questions that help us nail down our intention. Why are we doing this thing that we're doing, that are so powerful? So for this question, the action that I would suggest is to ask yourself the following questions about your ideal reader. What keeps her up at night? What does she want more than anything in the world? And what can your book do to help her get it? And remember that these questions apply equally to whether you're writing a self-help or a how-to book, or you're writing a middle grade fantasy about dragons, or adult historical novel about romance. These questions are going to apply to your reader, and knowing them is going to mean you're far more likely to give them a book that does what they want it to do. And the thing I always suggest that people think about is, when you read a book that you love and then you press it into a friend's hands and you say, you have to read this because, pay attention to that because. You have to read this because why? Or, this book is going to help you because X, or you're going to love this because of this other thing. And just paying attention that in your own life is going to help you answer it for yourself as a writer. The fourth question to ask before you start to write is, what point is your story going to make? So every novel starts with some idea of something that you want your reader to know or to believe or to feel or take away. And I often think about bumper stickers when I think about this. They're just really simplistic, basic ideas about what point is your story going to make? What is your novel going to talk about? And it might be something super simple, like all not all superheroes wear capes. So you can imagine the different stories that might come from this idea. Knowing, having a point and knowing what you want your reader to take away, what you want them to feel, what you want them to believe is going to help you write a story that does that. And there can be a million stories that come from different ideas. So this bumper sticker, you could imagine all kinds of thrillers that might come from this, all kinds of adventure stories that might come to this from this. You might imagine a mystery that could come from this. There are so many different types of stories that could come from this. And one example that is much in the world right now that I think is helpful to understand this is, what about a bumper sticker like Black Lives Matter? Here are 4 books that came from, I mean, I'm reverse engineering this. I don't know that the writers had that in mind in any way, shape, or form, but I'm just saying that a bumper sticker like that can result in so many different kinds of books. I mean, here I'm showing a young adult book, I'm showing an adult novel, I'm showing a sci-fi fantasy and a romance. And those all mega best-selling books that could have come from that bumper sticker. So knowing what your point is going to, it's not going to reduce your book to the same as every other book. It's just a starting point. It's a galvanizing point. It's a point for understanding where we begin. And your novel itself is not a bumper sticker, and it's not a billboard, and it's not a manifesto. A novel like that is going to irritate the reader and get terrible reviews. That's not what a novel's job is. A novel's job is to spin a tale and tell a story and transport us and take us on a journey. But if you don't know what point it's going to make, it's likely to not end up making any point. It's sort of like not knowing who your reader is or not knowing why you're doing it. You've got to really know where you're ending up with that point. So the thing to remember is that the novel is going to be a story in a particular genre with specific characters told in your unique voice. Knowing the bumper sticker of it is not going to reduce it down. It's actually going to open it up. The story becomes specific and particular by what you bring to it. This is back to that idea we talked about of execution. It's not just the bumper sticker that makes a book or the idea or the sketch of it. It's what you bring to it and how you bring your particular voice to it that is going to make it unique. So you don't have to worry about, I once did a workshop and 99% of the people had a point that was something around the idea of love means being truly seen for who you are. And everybody could start with that bumper sticker and end up with a really unique and different book in totally different genres with totally different executions. So knowing your point is not a reductive exercise, even though it sounds like it. It's like getting the pinpoint on the bulletin board with the thing that's like, this is what my novel's going to make my reader feel and what they're going to take away from it, and you can move from there. So you should think about what feeling you want your reader to be left with, or what belief that they might have about something. Just what point is that novel going to make? So the action to take around this question would be write 1 or 2 lines about the point your story is making. And it's amazing when I work with writers through this exercise that we can even have a conversation about it. You think that you could just write it down and be done, but oftentimes there's a lot of digging to do about what exactly do they mean and what exactly do they believe and what exactly is that feeling that they want their writer to take away. It can be a very powerful exercise. The 5th question to ask before you start to write is your plot married to your point at every single turn? So we just talked about the fact that books have points, but scenes have points too, or they should anyway. They should not be there for no reason. They should be connected to the whole. I like to think about an arc of change, that a story is about something that changes. There is an arc of change for the main character, and the reader is following along that arc of change. A scene is a slice of that arc. It's like taking a slice of the rainbow. And so we're going to see a tiny change within a scene too. So if that is the basis that we're working on, then everything's going to be tied together in a tight chain. And if you don't have that, what you have is just a scattering of random ideas. You have a scattering of random scenes, a scattering of random things that happen. There's no narrative drive. There's nothing that's going to hold that reader's attention all the way through. And you don't want that. It's not a story that somebody's going to read. So what you want is that electricity that drives through the whole thing, that connects one idea to the other, one scene to the other, all the way through the book. That's how we get narrative drive. That's how we get pages, readers turning pages. That's what we want, is that juice that's at the heart of the story. And the way you get that is by connecting the plot and the point. I have a tool that I use to teach people how to do it. It's a very simple tool that's very difficult to use because it's dealing with these very big ideas. So it's a simple tool that contains some big ideas, and it helps you to sort this out. And I'm going to go through what the inside outline is quickly here. So the idea is to marry the plot to the point at every single turn. The plot is the outside, the point is the inside. So the plot is what we see, it's what happens, it's the action. The point is that internal change that the character is going through, the way that they're making meaning of what's happening to them. So the point of every scene is what that character is feeling or believing or deciding. So the inside outline marries those two things together at every turn. So what you do is you have the plot or what's happening in a scene, and you have the point or why that scene matters to the protagonist. So those two combinations, the two plot point combinations, are tied together because of that clause. So what this means is we have cause and effect from every scene to every scene. That's what narrative drive is about. One scene causes the next scene to happen. The decision that the main character makes causes the next scene to happen. So it's because of that, the next thing happens. Because of that, the next thing happens. And every plot point is married to a point, a deep inside point for the protagonist. And by tying this all together, you're going to have a very strong underlying foundation for your whole story. And it's not going to be just a bunch of stuff that happens. So the reason that we do this inside outline work and the marrying the plot to the point is just the same as an architect makes a model. We want to be able to hold it in our hands. We want to be able to walk around it and see it from all angles. We want to see how it moves in space, how it occupies its shape. We want to be able to stand back and look at the story. And the inside outline is only 2 pages long for any novel. And it allows you to hold that whole story in your hand and look at it and see what's working and see what's not and see where the holes are and see where that drive falls apart. The inside outline is a tool that I use in the self-publishing formula course on revision. It's a tool that we use to plan and execute a revision because it's an analysis tool. So right now I'm talking about using it to build your story up, but you can also use it to analyze your story and figure out what's wrong. It's a powerful little tool. This is a couple of things people have said about the inside outline that I love this from writer Janet Fox. She says, I used to give it the metaphorical eye roll, and I thought it would be another plan that I wouldn't like, an outlining tool that I wouldn't like, she said. And she said the inside outline is different because it relies on cause and effect. Writer Alison Hammer says, it's so much better to realize a scene isn't necessary when you're doing your inside outline than after you've written 2,000 words. So same thing, KJ Dell'Antonia, the Chicken Sisters novel, she says it's literally saved thousands of words of seeking her story. So it's this simple idea of marrying plot to point. So this is an example. When you get these slides, you can read this a little more carefully. It's an example of how the scene and the point are tied together. So this is a middle grade novel, the start of a middle grade novel about a young girl named Georgie and her brother Dan. They're packing for their first time flying unaccompanied to their dad's house for a holiday that is a combination of Thanksgiving and Hanukkah that happens every now and then. And Georgie can't let go of the hope that her divorced parents will get back together. So she's a young girl, she's flying for the first time, and she's facing this idea of her family not being together. And the point of that scene is that Georgie hasn't believed in miracles since her parents got divorced. She's anxious about flying unaccompanied for the first time. So it's just a simple statement of what she's feeling and why this scene is even there. So the point of the scene is why is this scene even here? And same as the point for the book. Why is this book here? What are you trying to prove? What is trying to happen here? It's the same question, but for a scene. And then you can see how it drives down to the second scene. So the plot drives down because Georgie wants to bring the family menorah because she's going to be without her mom and without her parents together. She thinks that this is a good idea to make herself feel better on this anxious day. And her mother won't let her because it's a family heirloom. She gets mad at her mom. So one scene driving to that scene, and then this internal point driving to the next internal point. So Georgie hasn't believed in miracles. And because of that, she wants to continue the family traditions. She's trying to figure out a way to believe in something. And she's blaming her mother for the fact that she can't hold on to anything. So the scene and the point together are driving to the next scene and the point combination and building this cause and effect trajectory. And we build out in 2 pages the main scenes of your story to make sure that it's got narrative drive and that all holds together. So this is the beginning scene, the one we just saw. Oh, I'm sorry, it's actually not. This is the ending scene. What I was saying is the beginning scene that we just saw drives to these scenes. These are the last 2 scenes of this novel. And when you get these slides and you can sit down and read this and look at them more carefully, you'll be able to see that the beginning and the ending scene are like a bookend. They're connected. They resolve something. So at the end of this story, the character Georgie, rather than getting upset about her parents not getting back together, she focuses on the positive aspects of her future. So she's learned to resolve this rift in her family. She's learned how to figure it out. And I put the very last scene on this slide too, because it just makes me smile, where the author said that the point at the very end is everything comes together because this is a middle grade novel and that's how middle grade novels work. Yay. So the resolution of a novel is not going to be satisfying if it doesn't resolve something. And what it's got to resolve is the problem that was posed at the very beginning. So these scene point combinations are meant to drive all the way through so that there's a connection between where we started and where we ended up, so that there's resolution, so that the whole thing makes sense. So the rules of the inside outline is no more than 3 pages, double space. I say 2, and then I give people a little fudging room because it can be hard with a very long novel to get it all onto 2 pages, but I can promise you can do it. And no more than 3 lines per bullet. So I'll go back and show you that the bullet is the scene and the point. You don't want to go, they're a little bit more here because of the slides, how they look on the slide, but on a regular piece of paper, it would be no more than 3 lines. And every scene must cause the next scene. Those are the rules. And if you can do that for your story, you're going to have a structure and a container and a shape and an architecture, and you will not be able to go wrong. You'll be able to follow that roadmap for the book and get to where you need to go. It doesn't mean that you can't change things or have surprises or come up upon interesting things that you weave in. It doesn't mean that you're bound by what you've done. It just means that you have intention and you have a shape for the novel, and you know where you're going, you know what point you're making, you know why you're doing it. All the things are contained in this tool. Everybody always asks if they have to put in every scene, and the answer is no. You want to put in the main scenes. So this grid comes from a Kurt Vonnegut lesson that you can look up on YouTube. If you just put in Kurt Vonnegut story grid, you'll get a lesson that he teaches on how to plot stories out on a line. It's really quite remarkable. And every story follows certain patterns on the grid. So Cinderella is a story we all know, and I plotted it out here. And you can see that what we're looking for is just the big scenes, the big highs and the big lows. And then you're going to take a little piece of the trajectory that you're going to write one of your scene point combinations about. And in doing that, you can sketch out any story with these highs and lows. You want to avoid making a grid that looks like an earthquake chart, up and down and up and down and up and down. You just want the major scenes and the major points. And you can download more about the Inside Outline if you'd like to learn more about it at authoraccelerator.com/inside outline book. I'm writing a book about it, so that's what that page is about. But you can download a free PDF on how to do the Inside Outline if you so choose. The action to take is to create a 2-page inside outline for your story. So doing these things will allow you to write forward with confidence. And that's the key thing that these questions are about, is to get out of the way any doubts, any confusions about why you're writing, who you're writing for, what your goal is in writing, how the story is going to proceed and unfold. Knowing these foundational issues, and they're things most people never even think about, they're going to be the key to making all the decisions that we normally think about when we think about craft. So making decisions about who's going to narrate, what's the timeline going to be, is there going to be a subplot, what about secondary characters, what about, all those craft decisions are the next thing that you choose and that you decide and that you make. But knowing these foundational things are going to let you build on a really strong foundation and write forward with confidence, which is what we want. So you can learn more about some of these ideas in my course at Self-Publishing Formula on how to revise a novel. And you will see some of these same ideas reflected in, once you've got a draft, because that's the whole goal of what we're talking about today, is you get a whole draft of your novel. Then what do you do? How do you analyze it? How do you take it from good to great? How do you take this rough draft and make sure that you take it to the next level? And this is what the course is all about. And my sense about revision is just like we've talked about here. It's the foundational ideas of revision. It's the big chunks, the big, I think of it as heavy lifting revision, where we're looking at the development of the story. It's a developmental edit. So we're looking at large chunks and large blocks, and we might do some heavy lifting to move things around. And then the thing to do is to move to the line by line analysis and revision, which is what Pro Writing Aid is designed to do. They're continually optimizing to do. It's an incredible tool. It's so powerful. So after you do the big chunks, you move into that work where you're now looking line by line and making sure you optimize every piece of it. So that is how these ideas tie into that course if you would like to get a little more insight. That is the end of the presentation. So I hope that you all have a lot of questions, and I am ready and willing and able to answer them all.
I mean, there's a lot in that, and so I feel like, don't panic, everybody. We'll send out a replay tomorrow. And we actually, Jenny also wrote an article on our blog that has some of the key elements of her presentation today that I can drop a link there too. But there's so much in that I love. First of all, I love that everyone has homework. Everyone has to go through all of these different exercises. But I think that's really useful. I mean, one of the most popular sessions that we've done since we've started doing all of these webinars is we did one on log lines. and that it's similar to what you're talking about in that it's taking your big picture and everything and then reducing it down to just, like you were saying, your bumper sticker identity. And log lines are more than that, of course, but I think it's a really good exercise for everyone to try and take their big ideas and distill them.
Yeah, definitely.
And I love the idea of being really reader centric when you are talking about your book. Like, what are you actually trying to say to your reader? Not here's my story and here's how it's going to come together, but what are the ideas that you want to get across to your reader, and how are they going to experience it, and what are they going to take away, and how and what pain are you helping with? Great,
Yes.
good stuff there. Okay, we've got quite a few questions here. So Karen says, could you give us a real life example of a why statement from a book, like yours or someone else's? What should the why statement sound like, or what is one that exists in the world?
Yeah. So the why statements are usually a full page long, but I can tell you a story that gets at it. I am working with a writer now who is working on a book about a young girl whose brother is is diagnosed with cancer and loses his leg. So it's a very dramatic story about illness and fragility and life and death, and a young girl confronting these ideas for the first time. When I first saw this writer's story, it was, the dangers we talked about earlier. It was flat, it was messagey, it sounded like a billboard, there was no emotion on the page, it was just sort of there. It was a bunch of things that happened, and dramatic things to be sure, but there was no juice to it. And with a story like that, there has to be some juice to it, right? So I asked her to well, I was with her in person. Actually, we were at a writing retreat, so I was with her in person. But I said, can we just step back from the story itself, and can you tell me why you're writing a story about a young boy with this terrible situation? Why are you writing it? And she started sort of talk in general about the moment when kids realize that life is fragile, that we all die. She was sort of talking in general about that. And because I was sitting there with her, I felt I was reading her, and I felt able to ask this question. And I kept pushing her, and I kept saying, but why do you care about that? And is there someone that this has happened to? Is there some reason, why this story? So that, that's what we're always trying to get about. And she burst into tears and explained to me that she had lost a child to not this disease, but a different disease. And she was her deep level why was writing about what that felt like to the family, what it meant to the family, what loss was really like from the point of view of a young person. What is deep loss feel like? And tears are streaming down her face, but she also had this deep sense of relief because she had never articulated that. She'd had this sense that, well, I'm writing the story because it's cool and dramatic and whatever, but she'd never really thought, what is her connection to it? Why does she care? Even though it's right there, right? It's just super obvious, but her being able to say it out loud and speak it out loud, or if you're doing the homework I gave, writing one page, that's why I say to be brutally honest, because usually people start out with a surface level explanation. But if you can get down to why you really care about it, now we can really look at, okay, if that's what the story is about, what it means to experience loss, real loss for the first time, what it means to reconcile that within the context of a family. Now we know how to structure the story. We know what it's about. We know those bookends. We know where it starts. We know where it ends. We can pull that meaning all the way through. So that's the most powerful example that I've ever had, but I've seen it time and time and time again, where when pushed just a little bit deeper, writers, oftentimes it's the most beautiful thing that they've ever written. You can just tell. It's just it's just raw, it's real, and then you can take that emotion and bake it into your story. And I actually just have been listening to on Audible books a beautiful recitation of his life by the musician James Taylor, the American folk musician James Taylor. And he's talking about how he came to be a musician and how he came to write music. And he has this really beautiful, I want to go back and get it and write it down, because he said a musician, what music does is it makes people feel something. And they might feel longing, they might feel lost, they might feel joy, they might feel love, they might remember a time in their life that was meaningful to them. And he says, unless the musician is feeling it first, you can't create it for the listener to feel. And I think that's true also with novels. And so this question of why is meant to help you feel what you're trying to get other people to feel. So I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that, that comes back to that reader centric thing again. Like what is the thing that you feel that you want them to feel? What's the emotional transfer that you're trying to make from
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
right. Okay. So Kat says, how do you find your story point if you aren't writing for any specific reason besides wanting to write a good story?
So, Kat, I would say that that goes to the idea of what your goal is, right? So, what the writer's goal is. If your goal is to learn how to write a good story and to learn the elements of story and to learn how this medium works, that might just be your goal. And then you're going to be focusing on, okay, how does the scene work? How does character work? How does dialogue work? You'll be focusing on those craft things, and you wouldn't necessarily have to ask these questions. But if your goal is, I wanted to write a good story that other people are going to read and care about, so that skews toward publication. Now you're going to have to really be thinking about the reader and what they want and what they're going to need out of that story. So I think it sort of depends on your intention as a writer and your goal as a writer. And you may not, it's absolutely perfectly fine. There's so many reasons to write, and that might be your reason to write. But where I come from as a teacher and a book coach is, again, I see so many patterns over time. And if well, the way that I put it is, if you can sit down and spin a great story without having to think or plan or be intentional, you're probably some kind of genius, and you're probably not seeking help from anyone anywhere, because there are people that can do that. And they're people that we could probably name, native genius writers who are able to pull that off. It's just that most people can't. Most of us have to learn how to do it and have to be intentional about doing it. So I think it just is a matter of, when you come to a place in your writing career where you want to write a good story that gets read, that moves other people, then I think you would turn to these questions and turn to that
Well, in
that
a really good story, like if you're saying you just want to tell a really good story, if that's an adventure story, then you still want to make people feel that excitement. Saying that we just want people to feel things, it doesn't always mean dark, deep sadness or anything like that. I mean, maybe that what you want them to feel is fear because you're writing a story
yeah.
book, or maybe
Well,
yeah.
a perfect example, there's a book called that came out a couple years ago called Red, White, and Royal Blue. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the author's name. Maybe somebody who can look it up will put it in the chat. But it's Red, White, and Royal Blue. And it's this fantastic romance. It's a gay romance between the son of the president of the United States and the son of the British royalty. And it's just crazy, wild, fun romp of a romance. And this is a perfect example of what I mean. If you look up the writer on her website, why she wrote the book, she wrote it in the wake of the 2016 elections, presidential elections in America. And she was feeling very overwhelmed and very sort of confused. And what she wanted to do was just write a fun story that came out of this angsty political place that she was in. And thank you so much, Casey McQuiston. Um, so she wrote this book, and it is just too much fun. It is just like a wild, fun romp of a story. So it's a good story, but her motivation was so clear, was to make something, to sort of spin something good out of what she was perceiving to be a bad situation and an angsty situation. And that was, so you could see what her point was, you could see what her motivation was, you could see what her goal was. It's all there in her reasons for writing this book. And it is not a deep book. It is not a dramatic book. It's not a dark book. It's just a whole heck of a lot of fun. So it doesn't, knowing your deep level why doesn't have to be a story about cancer and death or drama or anything. It can be really fun.
Okay, cool. There's a couple of people asking about what if they have more than one point that they want to get across? Does that
Ah,
things, or does everyone need to distill it?
you have to pick one point. It's the same imperative. You have to pick one protagonist. And people push back against this all the time. And look, I'm an instructor and a book coach and a trainer of book coaches, and I teach what I believe. That is not to say that other people's beliefs aren't valid or good or useful. And what I always tell people is, do what works for you. Follow the method or the path or the plan that works for you, or pick and choose from different methods to find your own way. If you know what we're trying to do here is help people write good stories. So if what I say is not for you, go somewhere else and find a different way. But my belief is you must pick one protagonist and you must pick one point. And the pushback is going to be, well, but I'm writing romance. It's a he she thing, and they're both equally, weighty. It's like, no, there's usually one person who has more weight than the other, or whose story it is. Or they say, I'm writing Game of Thrones and there's 47 main, people. And it's like, well, no, there's usually always one person that emerges as the alpha protagonist.
Yeah.
And it's the same with point. If you have a bunch of different points you're making, to me, that's a clue that you haven't quite figured it out yet. That you haven't quite, because if you think about the bookends of the story, that the end needs to resolve the beginning, you can't have that. That's where the satisfaction comes, that beautiful resolution that you feel at the end. And the resolution could well be that there's no resolution. I actually, one of the books I flashed on the screen, I actually just read Angie Thomas's The Hate You Give. Everybody else read it 5 years ago, but a book coach is often far behind reading what other people are reading. I just read it. I thought it was incredibly powerful. And it's a story that ends with basically a lack of resolution. The character doesn't get what they want. They don't think they're ever going to get what they want. They recognize that they live in a society that is stacked against them. It is a gut-wrenching ending, because there's the resolution is that there's no resolution, but that doesn't mean there's not a point.
Yeah,
The point she's making,
point there.
yeah, the point she's making is very strong. It's very clear. It is, you know what you are going to feel when you walk away from that book. So I would say, if you're equivocating about the point, or who the protagonist is going to be, or really any of the questions that we might ask to set up a novel, whenever I'm working with somebody who wants to, what I call, break the rules, what we do is we enter into a conversation about why do you want to break the rules? What do you think that's going to do for your story? Why do you think these other things aren't going to do it for your story? What's your vision for this? And just being able to articulate why you're doing that is going to help you. And I have a really great recent example. Darren Strauss wrote a book called The Queen of Tuesdays. It just came out, and it's The Queen of Tuesdays is Lucille Ball, the comedian. And Darren Strauss is a instructor at NYU. He's a very accomplished writer. He's won a Guggenheim. He's very well regarded. And this book literally breaks every single rule. I just wrote a blog post about it. I wish I could look it up and put it in the chat for you. Probably somebody can find it if you just put Jenny Nash breaking the rules, Darren Strauss, it'll probably come up. But he literally breaks every single rule. The book is a mashup of memoir, fiction, and fantasy. It's like so bizarre. He moves around point of views in a very strange way. The whole thing is just weird. And if you read about why he did that, he was extremely intentional. He had very clear reasons why he was doing that, and he was in a position to do that. So breaking the rules is always great if you know what the rules are and you know why you're breaking them. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we say in Pro Writing Aid all the time. I mean, if you can learn all the rules and you can break them in a way that's really effective, then go for it, do it. But don't just break them for no reason. And
I found that
successful.
when I was writing the blog post for Pro Writing Aid and I took it into their program, and it, comes back with so much data, and it showed me that there was a pattern of a thing that I do. I think it involved M dashes. I'm kind of an overuser of M dashes, and and it points them out. And at first I was mad. I was like, "Shut up, Pro Writing Aid." But then it was like, oh, this is amazing data. I can see where I do that. I can see why I do that. Maybe I did it a couple times too many. Okay, I'll fix a couple of them, but I'm going to leave the others because that's how I write. I think that's a perfect way to approach rule breaking.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm not saying don't do any.
Yeah.
You're the author, do what feels right. But sometimes, too much of a good thing can be too much.
Yeah. And I see Neandra is asking the name of the novel that breaks all the rules is called No Resolution: The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, and it's the letter U, the hate you give.
It's really
And
fantastic.
I will stay here to answer questions as long as you want within reason. But if you have to go, I understand that.
We could do a couple more here. There's a lot here, and there's a lot of questions. I've just dropped a link again to the course because there's so much of this in Jenny's course, and then so much more on top of it. It's a bit phenomenal to go through. There's just so many
Well,
really
and what's
useful
great
tools
about
in
the
there.
what's great about the How to Revise Your Novel course is I'm able to show examples. So I'm able to put up on screen documents and walk through them, and you can download them. So it's much more, you get tangible as much
Yeah,
as
and
words.
you can do it in sort of smaller bits and pieces. Tonight we've sort of really
Crammed it all in. Yeah.
have to do it now on to the next thing. So in the course, Jenny gives the same kind of homework, but you have a bit more space and time to take it all in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, hang on. Should we do two more, and then we'll call.
Sure.
We're already over the top. So Daryl says, does the reader always need to have some kind of pain? Do you need to know what that is?
Yes, they do. And the pain, pain is the word that I use, but pain can be, doesn't have to be angsty and dark. Pain could be, I live in a small town and I want to go to the big city and be on Broadway, right? Pain could be, I just really want a puppy. Like there's so many different kinds of pain, but when you think again about those bookends and that what you want is that emotional resolution, you need to start out with some sort of yearning or desire or need. And sometimes the character knows their pain, and other times they don't know their pain or they're mistaken about their pain. So that's the classic, not gonna go for the boy next door. I'm gonna go for the, uh, big popular guy instead. That sort of thing. You might not know what you want, or um, you know the the twists and turns of the character coming to grips with their pain is part of the unfolding of a story. But just thinking in terms of what do they want, why do they want it, what's funny is the questions we ask of our character. We didn't even touch on that today, but once you get these baseline things about the writer, then you turn to ask them of the character, and you actually ask exactly the same things. Like, why do they want what they want? Where did that come from? Why does it matter to them? What do
What's
they
happen
think
if
they're
they
gonna
didn't get it?
right? What do they think they're gonna get? What's gonna happen if they don't get it? All of those questions are how you then get to the character.
Yeah. Linda says, are the 5 questions and the inside outline rule, are they good for first time fiction writers?
Yes, they can be used for anything. They can be used for memoir, they can use for any sort of fictional genre. You can do them side by side if you have two characters. It's an incredibly flexible, powerful tool. And on that link in the slides, the download gives a little bit more insight into how to use it and some examples and things. So you can take a look at that.
Yeah. Oh, somebody was asking if you can you give me that link again, and I will put it in the chat.
Yes, it
Author
is
Accelerator.
authoraccelerator.com/inside outline book. And if anybody listening is thinking book coaching sounds like the coolest job in the whole world, you can learn more about that at bookcoaches.com. That's the place to go for that.
Yeah, actually, Marv asked, "What does a book coach actually do?" This is our last question, and then we'll call it a night. Book coach actually.
Um, I think it's the most amazing job in the whole world. A book coach helps a writer do their best work. And it's just like coaching anybody. You're in it with them, you're in the ups and downs, you're in the creative process, you're helping them bring their book to life. So what I actually do every day is I talk to writers. Um, I just was talking before this webinar with a writer who's planning a series, and we were talking about what's the point of the whole series? What's the overarching goal of it? How are the books going to be connected? So talking about their big ideas and then working with them step by step. So an editor usually comes in when the work is finished, and that's what you would use Pro Writing Aid for as well when you're ready to polish it up. So that's usually what we think of as an editor, and a book coach is working while the writer writes. And you can work at any different phase of the process. At the very beginning of the process, helping a writer all the way through. I happen to lately have been on a jag of helping a lot of people land agents. I've had 4 clients land agents in the last 6 weeks. It's been a little nutty, but the it is it is just powerful work about the creative process. That's what it is. And a lot of people are book coaches to complement their writing careers. We have a lot of teachers and professors doing it. We have a lot of young mothers. It's a great side gig. It's a powerful way to be involved in the writing process and help others. So if you're inspired to do that, you can check that out.
All right. Cool. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for coming again, and thank you, Jenny, for fitting so much information into that little 35-minute slot of time. I appreciate that. If you look in
Thank
the
you for
chat,
having
everyone's
me.
saying thank you and how helpful it all was. We'll include a link to the replay and to Jenny's slides in the email that goes out tomorrow. So you can go back and go through things a little bit more slowly, and we'll include a link to the course on self-publishing formula as well.
And one thing that I want to say is if people's questions didn't get answered, if you go to the blog I wrote, they can respond to the blog on Pro Writing Aid, right?
Yeah, there's comments down at the bottom.
Yeah, just go on there and repost your question, and I'll go and try to answer those on the blog post. I'd be happy to try to do that if you didn't get your question answered.
Okay,
And
perfect. I've just put the link in the chat. So if you have, there are a few people that we didn't get to the question, so apologies for that. And the link's in the chat. And that's it. That's all the time we've got. So thank you so much, Jenny. Thanks
thank
everybody
you.
for coming again.
And thank you for all your kind words, everyone. I appreciate that.
All right. See you next time. Bye.